My soul longs for your salvation. I hope in your word. My eyes long for your promise. I ask, when will you comfort me? For I have become like a wineskin in the smoke, yet I have not forgotten your statutes. How long must your servant endure? When will you judge those who persecute me? The insolent have dug pitfalls for me. They do not live according to your law. All your commandments are sure. They persecute me with falsehood. Help me. They have almost made an end of me on earth, but I have not forsaken your precepts. In your steadfast love, give me life, that I may keep the testimonies of your mouth. So in verse 81, where it says, my soul longs for your salvation, another translation of that could be my soul faints. The idea of fainting is the loss of strength or a collapse. Here the psalmist felt that his soul was so weak, so empty of strength that it was unable to stand. So what does the psalmist do in this utter collapse and longing for God's deliverance? What does he do? It says, my soul longs for your salvation. I hope in your word. A commentator with the last name Bridges said, Saul, remember King Saul, under protracted trial, resorted to the devil for relief. Think of Witch of Endor. Even a good man, under a few hours' trial, murmurs against God. Nay, even defends his murmuring. You think of Jonah. How did this man behave, this psalmist? When his soul was fainting, his hope in the word kept him from sinking. I think that's a pretty big example of the power of Scripture to keep you afloat, to resurrect you from this fainting, this longing, this collapse, utter collapse spiritually. So this psalm, this part of Psalm 119, is perhaps arguably the darkest part of the psalmist's spiritual life. Is anyone familiar with the concept of the dark night of the soul? It originated in mysticism, and then it was this guy, John something, way back when in the Catholic Church, his name escapes me, that wrote like a commentary on it. And he took it from this idea in mysticism and really adapted it more to like religion, specifically Christianity. So it's this concept of like a spiritual crisis or just this feeling of a complete absence of God, like a complete emotional detachment from God. I really want to find the name of that man now. Let's see, I've got a sourdough recipe in the Bible pulled up, so that's not going to be helpful. But I will find that and post it in the Facebook group. But again, it originated in mysticism. It was a poem that was written. I think the man was Italian who wrote it. And then it was kind of expounded on and really applied to Christianity. And so, like an example, a way to articulate what a lot of people experience in Christianity. Let me scroll down to here. So I don't know if any of you have ever felt this, this knowing that God is supposed to be near you and supposed to be with you, but you do not feel it. You feel this detachment. I personally have experienced this for a prolonged period of time, and it was very challenging. There is a very famous example of this, and her name was Mother Teresa. A lot of people are not aware that Mother Teresa felt this utter detachment and loneliness and apartness from God for 50 years. She died feeling this way. I was doing some research about kind of her experience with the dark night of the soul, and I came across a book called I Love Jesus in the Night, which I added to my Goodreads list. And I'm very excited to read this, but this was a book review of that writing. And so I'll read an excerpt of this book review. Those who had the privilege of meeting Mother Teresa during her life or of hearing her speak knew that they were in the presence of a woman who possessed great certitude with regard to matters of faith. How then are we to explain those writings of Teresa of Calcutta, which at times, do we all know who Mother Teresa is or was? She's a nun that did just outstanding work to minister to the poor and the sick and the dying, literally in the street. Like, she was hands-on with these people. I absolutely love reading about her. I will read any book about her because I just find her examples of faith to be so shocking. They are so tangible. Anyways, how then are we to explain those writings of Teresa of Calcutta, which is another way she was referred to, which at times seem to suggest profound doubt about God's very existence? One pointer towards an understanding, I would suggest, is a comment John of the Cross, that's the guy I was talking about earlier, makes in the Ascent of Mount Carmel. It's a writing he did, in which he highlights the dual and paradoxical nature of faith. So a paradox is kind of going both ways, right? He writes, though faith brings certitude to the intellect, it does not produce clarity, but only darkness. This darkness is a trial for every believer. For in spite of the certitude which faith brings, so in spite of that certainty, that head knowledge faith brings, the act of faith itself is always opaque and resistant to reason. It is a radical, affirmative assent to truth, but it is not a direct seeing. Its assent, no matter how confident and sustained, is always obscure. And this fact inevitably awakens in the believer a certain mental unrest. Even the ordinary believer can feel at times like an unbeliever. And this feeling often develops into a profound anguish as soon as the darkness of the night of faith begins to deepen. But even in the most profound night of faith, the terrible feeling of no longer being capable of believing in God does not represent for the individual believer a loss of faith, or even what is sometimes referred to nowadays as a crisis of faith. On the contrary, it is a stage of radical purification, a graced bewilderment, a rite of passage towards an even deeper communion with God. I have found this in my personal life to be just spot on true. The time in my life where I felt complete absence of God and wondering, what on earth? You see in Psalm 42, David even says, he asks himself, why are you downcast, O my soul? Why so disturbed within me? Put your hope in God. He was even reflecting on himself. Why, and you look at this prayer up in verse 82, when will you comfort me? We learn in this that we are to ask hard questions to God. I spent a while, when was it? It was like 2013 and 14. I spent a while just kind of ignoring this absent feeling and like saying prayers of like habit, I guess, like you say it before you eat, you say it before you go to bed, whatever. But just so numb and empty. And I never acknowledged that with God. I didn't, at the time, I wasn't saying, where are you? Until finally I did. It was just so overwhelming. And I did exactly what the psalmist did. And I just said, when are you coming? Where are you? Why aren't you here? Why don't I feel you here? And the psalmist did not say, are you going to comfort me? He said, when will you comfort me? You believe he can, and he will. Why not yet is another question you might ask. That is a question I asked a lot. For many years, in many tears. Why? Why not deliver me from this? Why not deliver us from this? Why? I cannot see a good reason for this, whatever this might be for you, to be happening. I don't understand the justification behind this. Why are you not delivering me from this? Because I know you can. Do you find it hard to pray like this, though? Do you find it hard personally to look at God and say, I don't know why you're letting this happen. I don't know why you've not delivered me from this. Please, when will you comfort me? Have you ever prayed like that? Have you ever felt like that and maybe not even prayed it? Not a rhetorical question, real question. Have you? Have you watched someone else go through this? Yeah? Yeah. When in your life would these words fit you? How long, O Lord? I read another line in a commentary that I really liked that said, "Personal need continues to be a greater motivation for diligent study rather than theological curiosity." And that's very true. I have striven in that. So